start with something surprising. In healthcare, we often think the most powerful tools are advanced technology, robotic surgery, infrastructure, or breakthrough medicines. But after speaking to many healthcare leaders, I have realized something very different. Sometimes the most powerful medicine in a hospital isn't a drug at all, it's communication. The way a doctor explains a diagnosis, the way a nurse reassures a patient, the way leaders build trust inside a hospital. And today, on the occasion of International Women's Day, we are speaking with a leader who believes that empathy and communication can transform healthcare. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Smitha Chowdary Kankanala, CEO of Mitra Fertility and Beyond, founder CHCP and Belenso Ortho. Hello, ma'am, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ritika, and thank you to Medgate today.
Thank you. So, starting with the very beginning of your career only, ma'am. You started your journey as a physiotherapist, working closely with patients during recovery period. So, what initially sparked a essence of entering into the healthcare arena?
Um, okay, so I grew up in a generation when the parents had limited career choices for their kids. You either become an engineer or you become a doctor. I wasn't good with math. Science was my strong subject, so naturally I was inclined towards the science, related careers.
Hmm.
And very early on, I always wanted to become a doctor. And I also grew up in a generation where, families quietly limited the ambition of girls. I remember once telling an uncle who asked me, "What do you want to become?" And I said, "I want to be a doctor." And his response was immediate and sarcastic. He said, "Doctor, why not an actor?" That just kind of remained with me. It was meant as a joke, but I still remember it because it reflected how casually people dismissed ambition. And I think that probably has been one of the early experiences where I felt that I do not want my career choices to be limited by other people's aspirations or intentions. And then eventually, when I joined physiotherapy as a course, honestly, without full understanding of what the actual subject is. Because at the time, like many students at that time, it is one of the healthcare courses people pursued if you're not doing MBBS. But everything, I think, changed after I actually joined the course itself. So choosing healthcare was very, very personal. It's with, being a child wanting to do a certain course. That was the journey. But then once I got into the course, once I started working closely with the patients, I think that's when I understood what healthcare really means, that it is not just about medicine. It is more about people and how you and after spending like hours with the patient, because as a physio, you do get to spend a lot of time
Yes.
with them day in, day out, most vulnerable moments when they're rebuilding their energy, they're rehabilitating post
Yeah.
invasive or surgery. When you sit beside them day in, day out, you actually start seeing that differently, not just as a treatment alone. And that's when I realized that, healing isn't just biological, it is emotional and psychological. It's very, very deeply human. I think that is when I got into healthcare truly, only after actually getting into physio. Yeah.
Okay. So, ma'am, as you have worked very closely with the patient care, so how your early working care with the patients changed over the period and how you see the healthcare nowadays?
I think early on as well, one lesson that always remained with me is that patients don't experience healthcare like how healthcare professionals do. For doctors, nurses, or other healthcare professionals and hospitals, healthcare is just a system. It has protocols, it has diagnosis and procedures.
Hmm.
But for patients, it's something entirely different. They come with this fear, uncertainty. It's
Yes.
waiting for someone to tell them if their life is going to go back to normal or not. Because
Yeah.
patients don't come to hospital for fun. They only come when there is something going on seriously wrong in their life, with their health.
Yes.
Come with that fear and uncertainty. And when you sit with patients during recovery, you realize that what they remember most isn't going to be the treatment or the procedure, the protocol. It isn't going to be that. It's just about how they have been treated as a human being. Did someone talk to them clearly? Did
Yeah.
someone explain to them? Did someone listen to them? And did someone actually make them feel safe? Um,
Yes.
I think that is something that I have, it's a lesson that I have learned over the years. And I strongly believe at this point in my career, 20 years later, that's something that remains the core uh, part of what I believe in and how I would want healthcare systems to evolve.
Yeah.
I think that understanding is what shaped everything that I am today. Yeah.
And is there any moment with a patient in your career that made you to understood the real meaning of healing and care?
Um, Again, I have to be honest, like I haven't been in the clinical journey for many years. Like this goes back to very early days when I just finished physio and I was interning at the time. I remember a patient who had a major surgery on his knee. He was around 27, 28. He was engaged to get married. I still remember that he was involved in a very bad accident and
Oh.
had a very nasty knee injury, and he had to be operated on. And he was unable to walk. The injury was quite extensive, and he was bedridden for good 3-4 months. And then when we got involved, it was when he was starting to go on that rehabilitation journey. I remember early on when we were talking to him about during the rehabilitation journey itself. See, technically there was nothing wrong with the surgery that happened. It's just that the recovery and the rehabilitation takes a lot, and it takes toll on their emotional state as well.
Yes.
And there was one day when me and my senior, we were involved in the rehabilitative process. He was on one of these machines where you will have to rehabilitate the knee. He was doing these exercises. And I remember him telling both of us that, see, everyone keeps telling me that you need to stay positive, you have to keep up with exercise routine, you have to do this and that to get better. But no one actually ever tells me if I will ever feel normal again, if my life will actually go back to normal again.
Yes.
Uh, I think at the time I was quite young, not as experienced as I am now. But I think that's something, some of these experiences just stay with you. And over the period of time, I have realized that, as healthcare professionals, we often focus on the treatment or that for that moment, that instant. But the patients are actually looking beyond that. They're
Yes.
looking for that assurance and understanding and hope. I think sometimes that's how I started believing that sometimes healing actually begins when, the moment they feel that they are being heard
Yeah.
and understood. Yeah.
Exactly. Very.
Yes. Yes.
So, ma'am, moving from a clinical care into a healthcare leadership is in itself a big transition in anyone's life, whether she's a woman or he's a man. So, how this transition came into your life?
The transition from clinical to leadership has happened gradually over time. It's partly to do with the necessity as well at the time, and also to do with me being in the right place at right time. So when I first graduated from with physio degree, I left UK very early on. I'd never worked as a physio in India. I registered and studied and registered in the UK to work as a physio, but family commitments, personal commitments led me to,
Yeah.
away from healthcare space for almost a decade.
Yeah.
And during that 10 years or so, I worked in primarily client relationship roles with large companies like Marks and Spencer Finance and British Telecom.
Hmm.
Now, looking back, I think the experience I've gained while working those roles is what has helped me to understand healthcare better, and in terms of what makes difference within healthcare as well. when you introduce processes that are not specific to healthcare industry, that are considered very, very important in other industries. I learned how to relate them. See, eventually when I moved back to and then got back into healthcare, and when I started working closely with patients, the way I used to be able to navigate the leadership layers when I was working with large companies like M&S or BT, I learned that the same techniques actually work in healthcare too. If you have that understanding of where communication could break down, if you have the knowledge to identify the risks, where the risks are going to be higher, and if you have a process in place to avoid that, that affects the patient experience itself.
Yes.
And it also helps you in building teams that can function efficiently and ultimately resulting in greater patient experience. So over a period of time, I realized that, if I wanted to improve healthcare for more people, I can't really be within individual patient care and look at the system itself. And luckily for me, touchwood, the leadership opportunities that came along the way and the opportunities that came in terms of me being an entrepreneur, starting an organization or working with a larger organization, those opportunities helped me to influence culture, communication, and the way healthcare teams function. And it has been a learning journey for me as well. It's still work in progress. But I think that is where the real change happened.
So gradually and fortunately and opportunity knocked at your door and you just grabbed the opportunity. That's so great to hear, ma'am. So nowadays in healthcare, ma'am, we see a large number of women in the clinical care, but a very few in the leadership role. So when you were stepping into the leadership arena, what were the challenges you faced?
Um, the largest, even to date, is not about our capability. It is about how you are actually perceived.
Okay.
It's the perception. Um, you know, when you have to, as in a leadership role, you will have to interact with multiple
Yeah.
people coming from different mindsets,
Yes.
different functions, and different roles, and their own different lived experiences. I think the biggest challenge that women, for that matter, anyone stepping into leadership, has to navigate is how you are actually perceived.
Yeah.
And healthcare does definitely have many brilliant women doctors, nurses, and clinicians, but leadership spaces have traditionally been shaped by different expectations. And women, I'm sorry to say, still are sometimes expected to be agreeable, accommodating,
Yes.
and not too assertive. But then leadership demands something different. You have to take decisions. You have to make those tough calls. You have to hold boundaries, and you have to be able to question things. And
Yes.
sometimes have to draw a line and say, this is it, and I will not tolerate anything any further. You have to learn to be assertive.
Yes.
Learning to stand firm in those moments without constantly having to explain yourself, explain your authority,
Yeah.
uh, can be a journey. It has been a journey for me. It is continuing to be a journey for me, and it will be a journey for everyone who is stepping into this space, especially for women leaders. But once you realize that leadership is about responsibility, it's not about someone's approval or someone's perception. I think things will change.
Exactly, ma'am. The way you said that, leadership does not see the gender, it sees how much you can sacrifice for that position in your life. Very well said, ma'am. So, ma'am, it's just a personal perspective of yours, which I'm asking. How do you see that women leaders bring a different perspective to healthcare management?
See, again, while I want all in for women to come in and take up more leadership roles. In general, leadership needs diversity,
Hmm.
not just about women. It needs a diversity. I think that diversity in leadership allows that improvement in decision making. Um, and we have to agree, and research shows that as well, that women often bring a more relational perspective
Yes.
to leadership more than men. I'm not saying that men do not do it, but I think women do it more. And maybe because of the way they have been conditioned to learn to, look at the world itself.
Yes.
We tend to look at systems more from human lens, I would say. We think more about how does this affect the patient?
Yes.
Does this affect the team? Or if something happens, what happens to the person? If something is being said about a person, what happens to
Yes.
that person who is not in the room? And I would bet that, a woman will probably think about, probably even if it is a millisecond first than
Yeah.
a man would ever think. I think that sort of relational perspective definitely adds to the diversity within the leadership space. And healthcare is a very very human system, and the decisions are rarely technical alone. So I think that is where even more for women leaders to come in, that leadership when it includes different perspectives, the system itself will become more balanced.
Very well said, ma'am. Very well said. That a women not only see a single perspective, but a very wide perspective, which might forgotten by the men. I'm not saying all the men, but some men might forget it. But the women always have that thing in their mind. Ma'am, you very well said and very powerfully say that the most powerful medicine in healthcare isn't a drug, it's communication. How you will decode this beautiful line for the viewers who are listening to you?
See, I came to believe this after years of watching patient interactions. You can have the most advanced treatment in the world, but if the patient doesn't understand what is happening to him or her, they will remain afraid, and the family will remain afraid and uncertain. And communication there does something extraordinary. It first reduces the fear,
Yeah.
helps you build trust, and it helps patients participate in their own recovery. I've seen situations where one thoughtful conversation with the patient completely changed how the patient experienced their treatment. And I have seen situations where poor communication damages trust, even when the medical care has been excellent.
Hmm.
Wrong things said has led to medical legal cases.
Oh,
So that I have seen it. And that's the reason why I believe that, if you get your communication right, I'm not saying that if your medical care has been negligent, your communication can come to save you. That isn't what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, along with your medical care, clinical care, it is equally important to have that better communication channels established and better skills, given down to the staff. Doesn't matter which function they are in. They could be doctors, they could be nurses, they could be allied healthcare professionals, they could be operations. It doesn't matter if you get them to understand that communication properly, they will be able to enhance patient experience. It isn't, I mean, and that's when a lot of people keep telling me that what is communication? Is it a soft skill? It isn't soft skill. It's a core competence.
yes.
Not about what you say. It's not about the language. It's not about how you speak. Soft skills is about how you present yourself,
Yes.
how you present language. This isn't that. Communication is healthcare is not about soft skill. It's a core competence.
Very well said, ma'am. You just said that, ma'am, you have seen such kind of incidents in your life. Could you please tell us that incident in a different manner and how the importance of communication played a role into that incident?
We had this patient. The patient was actually a child.
Okay.
Patient was brought into the OPD, to the outpatient department, and the patient had high temperature. And the first time they came on one day, and the doctor saw and prescribed some tests. And then once the tests have come back, they asked the parent to bring the child back, have prescribed some medication. Now, this parent, we really do not know if it's the parent who intentionally did not want to get the test done at the time, or if the communication of the urgency of those tests have not been communicated, the tests were not done.
Yeah.
The patient brought back to us like 2 days later, but this time to the accident emergency, the temperature is very, very high. And it turned out to be, I don't want to go into the clinical terms, it turned out to be a condition where it was very important to get those blood tests done so we know what sort of fever we are looking at.
Yeah.
So, that the treatment could be altered accordingly. Now it was found in the ER that the child had a certain sort of fever and that needed intervention, and it so happened that it was by the time they brought back second time, it escalated. The child had to be put into the ICU, and extensive therapy had to be started. The family was very, very angry. They were trying to find fault with the doctor and the outpatient team who did not tell them about it. Now, in this particular situation, if there has been a proper process or a protocol or a framework that the nurses or the doctors are following in terms of communicating the urgency in that matter and also be able to convince, maybe we could have avoided it.
Yes.
Now, every situation is going to, this is just one small example that came to my mind, but such incidents are common occurrences in a hospital. And it is important for all healthcare professionals to be aware of different temperaments people come with and how do you talk to an anxious patient versus an angry patient.
Exactly,
That-
ma'am.
because you can't have the same sort of reaction to every single patient because they come with, like how we were talking about, it's a very, very human system.
Yeah.
You cannot have one size fits all approach
Yeah.
trying to talk to these patients. So, and I think that's just one example that I can give you.
And that's the word empathy plays an important role into just putting yourself into someone else's shoes so that you can learn and you can get to the circumstances, the highs and lows of that person. So, ma'am, despite of all these major advanced technologies, why does this communication gap still exist in doctors, hospitals, and the team over there? Why do you think it happens?
Um, Partly because technology is evolving faster than our culture. Hospitals have, incredible machines these days. We have ways of having digitizing our records. We have really advanced procedures that we can provide to our patients now. But communication actually depends on your habits, on time, on empathy, and on training. And many healthcare professionals were never formally trained in communication. They learn medicine, they learn about the procedures, they learn how to diagnose, they learn how to treat, they learn how to fill the forms, what is the importance of them. But then they're never actually taught how to speak to the patients to
Yes.
convey the same information. Especially in moments of uncertainty, especially in moments where patients are vulnerable and could be expressing different emotions. Like how I was telling earlier, you will have to be able to change the way you approach based
Yeah.
on their emotion. Are they anxious? Um, there are some patients that do not feel anything because they're just shocked at the time. And how do you approach that patient? And I think closing that gap in training is what is needed to be able to overcome that gap.
I'm talking to a doctor, like talking to a patient from a doctor's perspective, from a nurse's perspective. Small things always get stuck into the patient's mind. And how those small movements matter so much in the communication between the doctor and the patient.
See, that those moments are what humanize the system, right? Hospitals can feel very, very intimidating.
Yeah.
They can be scary places from a patient's lens. It could be fancy place for me
Yeah.
because I work there, and fancy place for a doctor because that is what they want. Like the most up to date, advanced equipment infrastructure.
Yes.
But then the machines, those procedures, and those unfamiliar moments can be very, very intimidating to a patient.
Yeah.
And that is why when a nurse speaks gently to a patient or a doctor takes time to explain something patiently, that hospital environment becomes less frightening.
Yeah.
And the patient may forget the technical details of the treatment. As I was saying, the patient will only remember how they have been treated. they will never forget how they've been made to feel.
Yes, very well said, ma'am. Ma'am, you have worked on posh communities, helping organizations build safer workspace. How important is a respectful and a safe workplace culture, especially for women in healthcare?
Like in any industry, this is, my experience with Bosch isn't specific to only healthcare. It's across all industries. And more so in healthcare, it's essential because over 70% of workforce in healthcare settings in India, especially,
Hmm.
um, are women. So healthcare environments can be very, very hierarchical and are
Yes.
very high pressure too. Without strong workplace culture, power imbalances can come in very, very quickly, and those power imbalances can create unsafe situations as well.
Yeah.
And that is where I think POSH frameworks, the protocols that are set forth by the POSH Act itself, um, they come into to aid. And it isn't just about compliance. It's about creating that workplace where professionals are feeling respected, they feel heard, and they
Yeah.
feel protected. See, when if you're not feeling safe, especially in a healthcare setting, if the healthcare
Yes.
workers do not feel safe at work, they cannot focus on patient care.
Very well said, ma'am. And if you are working in healthcare, you are dealing with a human, not a machine.
Exactly. So creating that sort of safe environment benefits everyone, not just the employees.
Yes. Ma'am, you started Unfold Hyderabad also to support women professionals. What inspired you to specially create this kind of community?
See, Unfold Hyderabad
And very
is a
unique name, ma'am. It's just sounding like a OTT web series like Unfold Hyderabad. Some mafia will come and tell you some stories.
Thank you, but it doesn't have that deep meaning though.
Yes.
Unfold actually is part of Lean in Circles. You may have heard about Lean in Circles
Yes.
by Michelle Zander, right? So this is a Lean in Circle and named Unfold Hyderabad. It follows the same Lean in Circle format. It brings together 8 to 12 people together for about 8 weeks or so. It's a very, very private, it follows the same framework. And then it's a space where uh, women professionals navigate leadership, family
Yeah.
responsibilities and care clothes, because they do that simultaneously. And they need a space where they can be open about the struggles that they are having
Yeah.
in their life and how they're overcoming as well. It's more about women recognizing that it is challenging, and also those women who have overcome those challenges. How do they help other women? It's a
Yeah.
community where we come together to do that. And I have seen, because I've been in healthcare and Lean in Circles, we do have some Lean in Circles that are focused on women who are in technical backgrounds,
Hmm.
especially in software sort of
Yeah.
environments, workplaces. And I felt there is a need for women who are working in healthcare to come together to do that sort of support to each other too. And that's the idea behind it. So Unfold Hyderabad is specific, Lean in Circle, specific for women in healthcare. For anyone who wants to connect and form a small circle, I facilitate that circle. But then it's led by all the members. They come together. They have a circle. They have a goal setting for the next week. They work towards a certain. They can it can be their own personal goal. It doesn't have to be a group goal. But it's a safe space where they can come. They can learn from each other. They can teach one another. So that's the whole idea behind it.
Yeah. So working and bringing some kind of communities like Unfold Hyderabad, posh community. So if I ask one question like this, which I'm going to ask you, is very much relatable to you. If you could change one thing about the healthcare systems, not only in India but globally, something that could immediately improve patient care and the workplace as well. So what it would be, ma'am?
For me, as I have been telling you since our beginning of the interaction, integrate communication training
Yeah.
to healthcare education as seriously as they do for clinical training or operational training.
Yes.
For all healthcare professionals, every doctor, nurse, and healthcare professional should be trained not only in the treatment and the workflow, but also in how to communicate with patients and among themselves too, not just with patients and families, among themselves. How do you navigate those conflicts that come up between, colleagues, between your manager, when you're, how do you communicate with your leadership?
Yes.
How do you remain assertive when you are talking about good cause? And I think that is more important. Um, that
Yeah.
one thing can make immediate difference.
Ma'am, my final question to you. What advice would you like to give to the young women entrepreneurs and the clinician who are inspiring to come in this healthcare arena on the occasion of International Women's Month? Not only day, but month.
Um, don't wait for anyone to hold your hand and pull you up, and don't
Yes.
wait for that permission to grow.
Yeah.
Um, and for you to be able to step up and grow and become something, it doesn't need a title. It doesn't have to begin with the title. It just begins with that responsibility. Do you want to take ownership for your work? Do you want to learn how to speak clearly what your ambitions are? Build that confidence. If you're not able to speak clearly, find help that will help you
Yes.
communicate with clarity, speak with clarity. And whatever you build, most important thing that I have learned over the years is that whatever you build with integrity. Because if you do not stick to one thing, this doesn't apply just for healthcare, across all industries, people will eventually recognize you only if you stand for something.
Yes.
You can't really change your opinions and choose to do a certain thing and then choose not to do just because it suits you at that point of time. I think early on for young professionals, do everything with integrity. What is it that you want to stand for, and stick to that.
Very well said, ma'am. That this integrity word is not just in the dictionary, it brings and it changes the life of a person drastically. So, I would like to close this whole conversation with a small rapid fire round where I will ask you a few questions which you have to just answer it in a word or in a sentence. So,
Okay.
ma'am, the first one. One leadership quality every healthcare professional should develop into their personality.
Accountability.
One communication habit every doctor should practice, not only doctor, nurse, and others, clinicians as well.
Listen before explaining. Listen first.
And one change hospitals should make to improve patient experience.
Hospitals give enough time for clinicians to have patient conversations. Protected time.
Yeah. And one lesson healthcare leaders must never forget in their whole life.
Systems are built for people, not the other way around. We get
Very,
confused quite a lot.
very well said, ma'am. And the last, one message for women professionals in healthcare in just one word or a line.
Use your voice because it belongs in a room. And if you do not learn to use it, nobody can help you.
Very
So
well
use
said.
your voice, use it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So
Thank you.
here we come to the end, and I just want to give a small brief of what the conversation was. Healthcare will continue evolving with technology and innovation, but conversations like these remind us that healthcare will always remain deeply human. Sometimes the most powerful intervention isn't a machine or a medicine, it is simply how we listen, how we speak, and how care for one another. So, Smita ma'am, thank you for joining us today and give us your valuable time.
Thank you so much, Ritika.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
I hope